My father called me a beggar in front of 100 people at the hotel I paid for. His voice echoed off the marble walls while my mother sipped her champagne like nothing happened. My sister smirked the way she always does when she thinks she's won. But what they didn't realize was that every bill, every flower, every glass in that ballroom was charged to my company. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just walked out, opened my laptop, and started pulling the strings. Within an hour, the music stopped. The lights dimmed, and their grand celebration collapsed. Before I tell you how it all unraveled, hit like and drop a comment. Have you ever been humiliated by your own family and decided to let karma do the cleanup? I used to think success would finally buy me peace. Turns out it only bought me silence, the kind that fills every call that goes unanswered, every visit that ends with, "We're proud of you, Lucy, but you work too much." Growing up, I was the responsible one, the bill payer, the fixer. My sister Victoria was the pretty one, the one with the soft voice, the one who never lifted a finger but always got the praise. My parents used to joke that I was born 30 because even at 15, I was filing their taxes, calling insurance, managing overdue bills, while they planned another family vacation they couldn't afford. When I started Parker & Co., they called it a cute side business. 3 years later, when I paid off their mortgage, suddenly I was the financial backbone of the family. They said it like it was an honor, but it was a leash. Every emergency call, every "we just need a little help" tightened it. My mother's favorite phrase was, "We're family, Lucy. Family helps family." I believed her until the day she used my card to pay for Victoria's engagement ring. I confronted her and she smiled that slow, pitying smile. "You make so much, sweetheart. Why count every dollar?" It's strange how betrayal doesn't start with shouting. It starts with tiny exceptions you make for people you love. One by one, they stack up until you wake up and realize you've built them a kingdom with your money and they've crowned you their servant. A few weeks before the banquet, Victoria called me, her voice syrup sweet. "Dad wants to do something special, a family celebration, just for us." She said it like an invitation to belong. I didn't know I was funding the show. When the first invoices came through my office, I assumed it was a mistake. My assistant asked if we'd started sponsoring private events now. The contract said Parker Family Gala. Vendor name my father. Payment source my business card on file. I should have canceled it then. I didn't. Some pathetic part of me wanted to see if maybe just this once they'd thank me. Instead, that night I got my answer. Not a thank you. Not even acknowledgement. Just one sentence. Get this beggar out, and the realization that I'd spent years financing my own humiliation. That was the night something inside me snapped. Not loud, not visible, but clean, final. When I got home that night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in the dark staring at the reflection of the city lights on my window, trying to understand how a family could spend your money and still call you a beggar. The silence felt heavier than anger. It was the sound of something ending. By morning, the noise started. First my mother, Lucy. "You know your father didn't mean it. He was just overwhelmed. Overwhelmed by what? The fact that I existed without owing him an explanation I didn't answer." Then came Victoria. "We can talk about this later, but right now the hotel's saying the payment didn't go through. Could you check that, check that?" Not "how are you?" Not "I'm sorry." Just fix it. That was when I logged into the business account. The numbers stared back, 6 figures in transactions tagged family event. I traced everyone, every signature, every clause, all under my LLC, my logo, my liability. The moment I saw my own name on the catering contract, I smiled. Not out of pride, out of clarity. I didn't rage, I revoked. Payments canceled, authorizations voided, flights reversed. By the time they realized what was happening, their family gala had turned into a logistical collapse. The hotel couldn't release rooms. The caterer pulled out. The DJ refused to show. And somewhere between those frantic calls, Jared showed up at my door. He was sweating through his dress shirt, face red. "Lucy, you have to fix this. They're panicking." I leaned against the doorway, arms folded. "I didn't break anything." He blinked. "You canceled everything." "No," I said quietly. "I just stopped paying for what wasn't mine." He looked at me like I was speaking another language. "They're your parents." "And I'm their bank," I replied. "Except this bank just closed its accounts." He threatened lawyers, lawsuits, public embarrassment. I just smiled. "Good. Then we'll need receipts." The truth hit him a second too late. He realized I had them all. Every transfer, every signature, every careless message asking for just a bit more. He backed away like he'd seen a ghost. When the door clicked shut, I finally exhaled. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the rush of taking back control. I walked straight to my office, unlocked a drawer, and pulled out a folder labeled Contingency. Inside were copies of every financial favor I'd ever done for them, organized, notarized, dated. Proof that my generosity had been methodical. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed my father's words in my head over and over until they lost their power. "Get this beggar out." Beggar. The word that once burned now sounded ridiculous. Because beggars don't fund banquets. Beggars don't own the roof people celebrate under. Beggars don't hold the receipts. That was the moment I decided this wouldn't end with silence. It would end with documentation. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Unknown numbers, family group threads, even voicemails from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. They all said the same thing: "Lucy, this has gone too far. Too far." Apparently revoking what was mine counted as an act of war. By noon, my inbox was a battlefield of emotions, pleading, blaming, and thinly veiled threats. One email from my mother stood out. "We didn't mean what we said. Your father's embarrassed. Just pay the venue and let's move on." I stared at it for a full minute before replying. "You moved on the second you called me a beggar." Then I hit delete and blocked her address. That's when Franklin, my family's longtime accountant, called. His voice was cautious, almost apologetic. "Lucy, I was reviewing your parents' trust documents and something's off. The beach condo payments aren't coming from their account." I turned my chair toward the window. "Whose are they coming from?" There was a pause. "From an LLC tied to your name. Parker & Co." I almost laughed. They hadn't just humiliated me, they'd built their lifestyle with my corporate funds and filed it under inheritance. "Franklin," I said slowly, "do me a favor. Run a full audit. Every transaction since 2017. He hesitated. "Lucy, if I do that, it'll get ugly." "It's already ugly," I said. "Now let's make it legal." By the end of the day, I was in my lawyer Tiffany's office. Her space looked like her personality, minimal, sharp, cold. She listened quietly while I laid everything out: the canceled payments, the fraudulent condo, transfers, the years of misuse. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "We can do this two ways," she said. "Quietly or properly." "Properly," I replied without hesitation. She nodded once. "Then we'll file. Fraud, misrepresentation, unauthorized use of funds, property reassignment." I looked at the papers. She drafted the legal language neat and surgical. "They'll try to call my bluff," I said. Tiffany smiled faintly. "They already did." Within 48 hours, the documents were served. The same family that once called me for money now received certified letters with my company's seal at the top. The same logo that had funded their vacations now marked their reckoning. That night, my mother's voicemail came through, her voice cracking. "You're destroying us over one mistake. People will talk, Lucy. The church, the neighbors, your father's reputation. That word had always meant more to them than truth." I let the message play until it ended, then pressed save, evidence. By morning, the condo title transfer was confirmed, legally, irrevocably mine. Their dream of a retirement escape, gone. I sat at my desk, the document still warm from the printer, and whispered to myself, this isn't revenge. It's reconciliation with reality. And for the first time in years, I felt free. The hearing date came faster than I expected. 3 weeks of silence, punctuated by gossip I wasn't supposed to hear. My cousin texted me screenshots from the family chat I'd been kicked out of years ago. "Lucy's just being dramatic," one message read. "She'll cave before court." Another said, "She won't risk Dad's reputation." "She never does." They had no idea I'd stopped protecting reputations the moment mine was destroyed. The morning of the hearing, the sky was a pale gray, heavy with rain. I dressed like armor, navy suit, low bun, steel watch. In the mirror, I didn't see the daughter they dismissed. I saw a witness, a creditor, the living ledger of every dollar they'd taken. Tiffany met me outside the courthouse, folders in hand. "You ready?" I nodded. Been ready for years. Inside, the air was cold and sterile, the kind that hums with fluorescent lights and quiet tension. My parents sat across the aisle, my mother in pearls, face tight, my father clutching a hat like it was the last thing holding him upright. Victoria scrolled her phone, pretending not to care. The judge called my name first. "Ms. Parker, you filed for financial restitution and property reassignment." "Yes, Your Honor." Tiffany stood beside me, calm and lethal. "We'll be showing evidence of misuse of corporate funds, falsified inheritance claims, and trust account manipulation dating back 6 years. As she spoke, she clicked the remote, and the first slide lit up on the screen behind us. Charts, dates, transactions. This, Tiffany said, is the account history from Parker & Cosa, directly linked to the payments for the family gala, where Ms. Parker was publicly humiliated and expelled. The room went silent, except for the soft buzz of the projector. Line after line appeared: hotel deposits, catering invoices, luxury flights. Everyone signed under my name. My father shifted in his seat, face flushed. "We didn't know," he said suddenly. "She volunteered those payments." The judge's eyes narrowed. Volunteered or unaware, Tiffany didn't flinch. "Your Honor, we also have documentation showing that the Parkers claimed ownership of a beach property, purchased entirely under my client's company. They declared it as inheritance on their taxes." The next slide appeared: the condo deed, my logo, my digital signature. My mother's hand shot to her mouth. "Lucy, we can talk about this." Tiffany cut in, her voice smooth. "No, Mrs. Parker. We'll talk about this here on record." For the next 40 minutes, she laid everything bare. The bank transfers labeled urgent family repairs that turned out to be a kitchen remodel for Victoria. The college fund withdrawals spent on spa weekends. The wire labeled medical expenses that went straight into my father's vintage Mustang restoration. It wasn't just money, it was a timeline of entitlement. Finally, the judge turned to me. "Miss Parker, what outcome are you seeking today?" I stood. My heart wasn't pounding. It was steady, cold, certain. "I'm not seeking punishment," I said. "Just truth on paper. Let the record match reality." My father slammed his palm on the table. "This is ridiculous. You're destroying your family." I met his eyes. "No, Dad. I'm auditing it." He froze, the words hitting harder than I expected. Maybe because they were true. The judge raised her hand for silence. "The evidence is substantial. The property will remain in Ms. Parker's name. The misused funds are to be reimbursed to the trust under court supervision. Any further claims against Ms. Parker's company are void." The gavel hit the block sharp and final. Across the aisle, my mother whispered something to my father, but he didn't respond. Victoria's eyes glistened not with guilt, but with humiliation. When court adjourned, Tiffany leaned over and whispered, "Elegant justice." I exhaled slowly. No headlines, no handcuffs, just balance. As I turned to leave, my father rose from his seat. For the first time, he didn't look like a patriarch. He looked like a man who'd spent his whole life pretending he was one. "You've made your point," he said quietly, "but you're about to ruin us. Are you proud of that?" I paused in the doorway, feeling the weight of every year I'd spent paying their bills, their debts, their silence. "No," I said. "I'm not proud. I'm tired. Tired of funding my own erasure." He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came, only a long, empty breath. Then he placed a folded check on the bench, blank signed. I slid it back. "This was never about your money," I said. "It was about mine." Outside, the rain had stopped. The courthouse steps glistened in the wet light. I took off my heels, walked barefoot for a few seconds just to feel something real beneath me. Tiffany joined me. "You did it," she said. I looked back at the courthouse doors. "No," I said softly, "I just stopped pretending." For the first time in my life, I wasn't the provider, the savior, the fixer. I was simply Lucy Parker, the woman who stopped paying for love that never existed. And that silence, the one that followed, wasn't empty anymore. It was earned. Weeks passed, and the silence that once felt cruel began to sound like peace. No more late-night calls, no more just this once texts, no guilt disguised as family love. My phone stayed still, and for the first time in years, I didn't dread picking it up. The court's decision rippled through every corner of their lives. My parents sold their country club memberships. Victoria deleted her Instagram for a while after someone commented, "Guess your sister owns that condo now." The gossip burned through their circle faster than they could spin the story. But I didn't care. I wasn't watching. I'd sold the condo a month after the ruling. The proceeds went straight into something new, the Parker Foundation, a fund for women putting themselves through college without family support. I wanted the money that once fed their vanity to feed someone's future instead. Sometimes late at night, I'd still think about the day in the hotel lobby, the echo of my father's voice, the way everyone turned away. But the memory didn't sting anymore. It was just a scene from a movie I'd finally walked out of. Then one afternoon, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No return address. Inside a photograph from that banquet, everyone dressed in silver and navy glasses raised mid-toast. In the background, blurry but unmistakable, was me, mid-turn, leaving the frame. On the back, a note written in Victoria's handwriting. This was the moment it all fell apart. I stared at it for a long time, then fed it through my shredder, piece by piece. What fell apart wasn't family, it was illusion. The illusion that love requires sacrifice from only one side. When the last strip of paper disappeared, I felt something like relief. Not triumph, not revenge, just quiet. And in that quiet, I realized I hadn't lost a family. I'd freed myself from financing one. Family isn't supposed to feel like debt you can never finish paying. Sometimes the only way to heal is to stop handing out second chances disguised as help. I didn't ruin my family, I just ended their overdraft. And in that space, I built something better. Boundaries, peace, and a future that finally belongs to me. If you've ever had to walk away to protect your sanity, tell me in the comments. Your story might help someone else do the same. And don't forget to hit subscribe. More stories like this are coming.
My name is Muriel Simmons. I'm 29 years old, and if there's one thing I've learned about love, it's that it doesn't disappear overnight. It fades slowly like a song, playing from another room until one day you realize it's not even playing anymore. When I met Tyron Cole, I thought I'd found someone who balanced me. He was charming, magnetic, the kind of man who could talk to anyone about anything and make them feel like they were the most interesting person in the room. He worked in marketing, and he thrived on attention. He needed eyes on him the way most people need air. I was different. I liked quiet things, coffee before sunrise, slow mornings, movie nights with takeout. My world was steady structured, maybe even boring to some, but Tyron made it brighter. He made it feel like my life had background music again. For 3 years, we were what everyone called solid. Not perfect, not wild, but dependable. He brought the energy, I brought the calm. People used to joke that I grounded him. I wore that like a badge of honor. Looking back now, that was my first mistake. Tyron loved the idea of balance until it started to feel like restraint. It began with harmless flirting. At least that's what I told myself. There was a woman in his department, Clara, a pretty brunette with a laugh that could slice through glass. She started showing up in Tyron's Instagram stories. Lunches, happy hours, inside jokes tagged with #workwife. At first, I ignored it. I trusted him. I wanted to trust him. But one night, he posted a boomerang of them at some rooftop bar. Her hand on his shoulder, his face close to hers. The caption read, "My favorite headache." I remember staring at my phone, heart hammering. Not because I was jealous, but because I suddenly felt embarrassed. Embarrassed that everyone who saw that post might think I was okay with it. When he came home that night, half drunk, glowing from attention, I asked as calmly as I could, "Muriel, hey, can I ask you something?" That post with Clara, Do you think that's a little disrespectful? He blinked, then laughed like I'd just told a bad joke. Tyron. You're not seriously jealous of Clara, are you? Muriel, it's not jealousy. It just looked intimate, that's all. He smirked, loosened his tie. Tyron, relax, Len. It's just a joke. She calls me her work husband. I call her my work wife. Everyone knows it's not serious. Muriel, then maybe it doesn't need to be public. That's when his expression shifted dismissive, almost bored. Tyron, you're so uptight sometimes. You know you're the real one. Don't turn this into a trust issue. He kissed my cheek and walked off to change, leaving me standing there with that pit in my stomach that felt suspiciously like humiliation. That night he fell asleep easily. I didn't. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering when asking for respect had become being dramatic. The next few weeks, the pattern continued. More nights out, more team bonding, more photos I didn't want to see. Every Friday, he'd get dressed like he was auditioning for a lifestyle ad, crisp shirts, new shoes, expensive cologne. Don't wait up for me, Miss Responsible, he'd say with a grin. He always said it like a joke. I stopped laughing around the third time. I remember one evening clearly. I'd stayed late at work, debugging a client's logistics software. The office was empty, except for the hum of the vending machine. Out of habit, I opened Instagram. Tyron had posted a story, him and Clara again. This time she was feeding him fries across the table, captioned, "Work dinners get dangerous." My stomach dropped. I didn't cry. I didn't text. I just stared at the screen until it dimmed, then quietly packed my bag and left. The next morning over coffee, I finally said, Muriel, do you really think it's okay to let another woman feed you fries while you're in a relationship? He looked at me like I was overreacting. Tyron. Oh my God, you saw that. You're stalking my stories now. Muriel, you posted it publicly. Tyron. You're being controlling, Muriel. It's not a big deal. That word controlling hit me harder than any insult. He said it so smoothly, like he'd been saving it for a day I dared to speak up. I remember setting my mug down carefully, my voice barely above a whisper. Muriel. You know what's not controlling Tyron, expecting basic respect. He shrugged, leaned back, and said something I'll never forget. Tyron. We're not married, Muriel. You can't expect loyalty yet. The room went still. Even the refrigerator hum seemed to stop. I stood there, the air around me thick with disbelief. I wanted to yell, to throw something, but instead I heard myself say quietly, Muriel. Then you'll never have to worry about mine again. He blinked confused, maybe waiting for me to cry or fight. But I didn't. I walked to the bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, and started folding clothes. He didn't move, didn't ask me to stay, didn't even stand up. When I zipped my bag and walked toward the door, he finally spoke. Tyron. You're really leaving over this. Muriel, no, I said. I'm leaving because you think this is normal. The door clicked behind me, soft and final. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. I remember thinking how quiet the world suddenly was without his voice filling every space. I didn't feel angry yet, just hollow. But as I walked down those dim apartment stairs, duffel bag on my shoulder, a strange calm settled in my chest. Maybe it wasn't heartbreak I felt, maybe it was relief. Because deep down, I already knew something he didn't. When someone treats your boundaries like a joke, the punchline always ends with you walking away. That was the night I first mistook silence for peace. I didn't expect him to call that night, and he didn't. Maybe a part of me hoped he'd show up at my friend Noah's apartment drenched in guilt or rain or both. But Tyron didn't chase anyone, not even the people he claimed to love. The next morning, my phone lit up with a single message. I hope you're not overreacting. Let's talk when you calm down. I stared at it for a long time before turning the screen face down. When someone reduces your pain to a mood that's not love, that's control wearing charm as camouflage. I stayed with Noah for a few nights. He didn't pry, just handed me coffee and offered his couch. He's an idiot, Noah said simply. Yeah, I replied. But he's an idiot I let in. The silence that followed was comforting. No music, no voices, just the hum of the city through the window. For a few days I floated through life half numb, working remotely, ignoring messages from mutual friends, and telling myself that walking away wasn't weakness. It was self-respect in motion. But life has a way of testing your resolve right after you make a choice. On Friday night, Noah convinced me to step outside for air. We stopped by a cafe near downtown, the kind with soft jazz and low lights, exactly the kind Tyron used to claim was too quiet. When we walked past the big glass window, I froze. Inside, under gold hanging lights, sat Tyron and Clara. She was laughing at something brushing her hair behind her ear, her hand grazing his arm like they'd done it 1,000 times before. His grin was easy, relaxed, the same one he used on me when we first started dating. For a split second, our eyes met through the window. He didn't flinch. He didn't even look guilty. I turned away before Noah could say anything. "Let's just go," I whispered. By the time we reached the corner, I was shaking. Not from heartbreak, but humiliation. The kind that makes your skin burn, even when you've done nothing wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face across that table, unchanged, unbothered. The next morning, I drove to our old apartment. His car was parked out front, his windows fogged from the morning chill. He was home. When I stepped inside, he looked up from his phone, startled but not surprised. "Tyron, Muriel. You came back. Muriel. Don't flatter yourself. I came for the rest of my things." He sighed, leaned back, trying for that practiced smirk. "Tyron, you're really doing this." "Muriel. I'm not sticking around for someone who treats loyalty like an optional subscription." "Tyron, God, you're being dramatic." "I didn't cheat, Muriel. We were just figuring things out." "Muriel. You were figuring things out with someone else while I was paying half the rent." That hit him. His jaw tightened, but instead of apologizing, he laughed a dry, empty sound. "Tyron. So what you think that means? I owe you forever." "Muriel, no. Just honesty. But I guess that's asking too much." He muttered something under his breath about old-fashioned women like valuing loyalty was a relic of another century. I kept packing, slowly, methodically. The sound of clothes folding was louder than either of us speaking. Every so often he'd throw in a comment like he was trying to bait me. "You'll never find someone who's as upfront as I am. Most people lie, Muriel. At least I'm honest about what I want." Finally, I stopped and looked at him. "Muriel, you're not honest, Tyron. You're selfish. There's a difference." He blinked, maybe realizing that for the first time I wasn't angry, I was done. "Tyron, maybe I just don't want to live by your outdated rules." I smiled faintly. "Muriel, then live by your own. Just don't expect me to stay in your world." That was it. No screaming, no tears, just the clean sound of my suitcase zipper closing. When I reached the door, he called out one last time. "Tyron, you'll regret this someday. You'll see how boring peace feels." I didn't turn around. "Muriel, then I hope boredom feels like freedom." The hallway outside smelled of dust and rain. I stepped into the elevator, and when the doors closed, I finally exhaled. The kind of breath you don't know you've been holding for months. Driving away, the city looked different, muted, washed out. Every street corner carried memories I didn't want anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't replay the breakup. I just kept driving until his building disappeared in my rearview mirror. Later that night, I sent him a single text. "I'll come by next week for the rest of my things. Please leave the key on the counter." He never replied. For days, I told myself that silence was closure. But the truth is, silence only feels peaceful when it's shared. When it's one-sided, it just echoes. Still, I chose it. I chose the echo. Because anything was better than being drowned out by someone who laughed every time I asked to be heard. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real ending. Because some breakups don't explode. They just fade quietly like a joke that was never funny to begin with. The first few weeks after leaving Tyron felt like detox. No calls, no "where are you" texts, no calendar reminders tied to his schedule. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that used to feel empty, but now felt like oxygen. I crashed at Noah's apartment for a while. His couch sagged in the middle, and his dog snored like an old man. But it was still the most peace I'd had in months. He didn't ask for details, didn't try to dissect what went wrong. Instead, he just said, "You don't have to explain anything, Muriel. Just breathe." So I did. The first breath was guilt. The second was grief. The third, freedom. I threw myself into work. My projects at the logistics firm suddenly became my therapy. I stayed late, debugging lines of code like they could fix the broken logic in my personal life. At home, I started running again. Just me, the pavement, and the sound of my own heartbeat. Every step felt like a small reclamation of space, of time, of self. But healing isn't linear. There were nights I still reached for my phone, half expecting a "miss you" text that never came. My thumb hovered over his name in my contacts list more times than I'd admit. Then one night I deleted it for good. The next morning I made myself pancakes. No special reason, no anniversary, no good morning selfie to send to anyone, just pancakes. And for the first time, that felt like enough. Months passed. Life reshaped itself quietly. One afternoon, while I was reviewing a software proposal, Noah called. His voice carried that cautious tone people use before delivering news they're not sure you want to hear. Noah, you didn't hear this from me, but Tyron and Clara are official now. Muriel. Yeah, I figured. Noah. He's been telling people you were too possessive. That's why it ended. I laughed, not bitterly, just softly, like I was finally seeing the pattern. Muriel, of course. He rewrites stories when he's the villain. There was a pause, then Noah said, You sound okay. I am, I replied. Or I'm learning to be. That night, I sat on the balcony of Noah's apartment's city lights, blinking like distant thoughts. I watched couples walking below, some laughing, some arguing, and realized I didn't envy any of them. For the first time in years, my peace didn't depend on someone else's mood. A few months later, I moved into a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much bare walls, one plant I was sure I'd kill within a week, but it was mine. Every sound belonged to me, every silence too. I stopped checking social media altogether. Not because I was afraid of seeing Tyron, but because I didn't care to. I didn't need to track his chaos anymore. Then, one evening, in early autumn, as I was cooking dinner, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened the message, and my heart didn't race this time. It just noticed. Tyron, hey, I think we should talk. I feel like you misunderstood me. I stared at it for a long moment, then chuckled. That was his version of closure, turning every betrayal into a misunderstanding. I didn't reply. I didn't even save the number. I just deleted the text, wiped my hands on a towel, and went back to stirring the soup. No reply. No second thought. Because when someone shows you who they are, misunderstanding them isn't the problem believing them was. That night, I went for a walk under the city's fading neon lights. Couples brushed past me, their laughter echoing off wet pavement. I smiled not because I was happy, but because I was free. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with music or grand speeches. It whispers. It hums quietly when you realize you don't owe anyone a reaction anymore. A year ago, I thought silence was the absence of love. Now I knew better. Silence wasn't emptiness. It was peace earned the hard way. And that's when I realized I hadn't lost anything. I'd simply stopped fighting for what was already gone. It had been nearly a year since I last saw Tyron's face, long enough for the memory of his voice to blur, long enough for his name to stop hurting when it came up. I'd moved into my own apartment by then, small, bright, and quiet, the kind of place where the hum of the refrigerator felt like company, and the morning sun through the blinds looked like forgiveness. Work was going well, too. My manager had noticed the long hours and calm consistency I brought to projects. A quiet promotion followed a raise, a corner cubicle, and a strange kind of stability I hadn't felt in years. I didn't celebrate with champagne or fireworks. I just lit a candle that night and told myself, you're finally okay. That's when karma decided to knock. It came disguised as Noah's voice on the phone one Saturday morning. Noah, you sitting down, Muriel. That bad, Noah, that good, he chuckled. So apparently Tyron's not with Clara anymore. My heart didn't skip. It didn't do anything. It just listened. Muriel. That was quick. Noah, turns out Miss Workwife was sleeping with another guy from their office. Muriel. You're kidding. Noah. Nope. And here's the kicker. When she confronted him, he told her the same thing he told you. Muriel. Let me guess. Noah. We're not married, so you can't expect loyalty yet. I didn't laugh. I just smiled into the silence, slow and small. Poetic justice has a quiet sound. It doesn't roar, it exhales. Noah, you okay, Muriel? Yeah. I guess he finally met someone who speaks his language. For the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not out of satisfaction, but out of symmetry. Life had a way of circling back to people who never learned from what they broke. Over the next few months, bits of gossip floated my way. Tyron and Clara's breakup had become office folklore. Apparently there was shouting tears, even HR involvement. He'd been reassigned to another team. Meanwhile, my world was the opposite of chaos. Mornings filled with coffee and podcasts, evenings spent reading or painting small canvases I'd never show anyone. I wasn't chasing peace anymore. It was just there, sitting beside me like an old friend. Sometimes, though, I'd get glimpses of who I used to be. The woman who thought love was supposed to be loud, fiery, complicated, the kind of love Tyron offered. And I'd whisper to her, you survived that storm, so you could enjoy this calm. A few weeks later, Noah called again. I could hear the disbelief in his tone before he even spoke. Noah. You won't believe this one. Muriel. At this point, I believe anything. Noah Tyron's been dumped again. And apparently, it's messy. Muriel. Let me guess. Another coworker, Noah, not this time. A freelancer he met online. She left him when she found out he was still seeing someone else. I shook my head, a soft laugh escaping before I could stop it. Muriel, same movie, different cast. Noah. You're really not even a little smug about this, Muriel, no. You can't be smug about someone who never grew up. That night I sat by my window, watching the rain slide down the glass. For a brief second, I pictured Tyron alone in his apartment phone, lighting up with no one left to text. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel triumph. I felt distance, the kind that doesn't ache anymore. People think karma means revenge, but it's really just life teaching balance. You throw chaos into someone else's peace, and one day it lands right back in your own. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in months. You don't need closure from people who taught you everything you needed to close yourself. The next morning, sunlight streamed across my floorboards, warm and unapologetic. It hit the small mirror I kept by the windowsill and bounced a golden line across my face. For the first time, I didn't flinch at my reflection. The woman staring back wasn't the quiet one who begged for respect. She was calm, capable, untouched by someone else's storms. Tyron's story had come full circle, but mine had only begun to open. Because sometimes karma isn't about payback, it's about finally learning to stop looking back. I thought that was it. That karma had handled whatever balance the universe needed, and that I could finally live without Tyron's shadow lurking at the edge of my life. I was wrong. It started with another text. Same number I'd deleted months ago, same casual tone that used to pull me back in. Tyron. You were right about her. I should have listened. Just one sentence. I stared at it for a few seconds, then locked my phone and set it face down on the table. I didn't reply. I didn't even delete it. I just let it sit there like a dead leaf on clean water. 2 days later, another message appeared. Tyron, I miss you. I've been thinking about us. Can we talk? That one I did delete. Because when someone burns the bridge, you don't stand at the riverbank waiting for them to learn how to swim. Still, it stirred something, a faint curiosity about how far he'd fallen. And the world, as if on cue, delivered the answer through Noah. He called one evening, his voice carrying that strange mix of pity and vindication. Noah. You're not going to believe this. Tyron's life is a disaster right now. Muriel. Define disaster. Noah. He got laid off. Clara's gone. His parents cut him off financially after bailing him out of debt. He's back living in his old apartment alone. I exhaled slowly. Not surprised. Not thrilled. Just done. Muriel. That's unfortunate. Noah. That's all you're going to say, Muriel. I already said everything that mattered a year ago. But life apparently wasn't finished with its irony. A week later, it rained hard. The kind of cold rain that makes the city look like a reflection of itself. I'd gone out for coffee and was walking home under my umbrella when a car pulled up in front of my building. The headlights caught a familiar face through the blur of water. Tyron. He stepped out before I could move, standing under the awning, like a ghost, unsure if it belonged in this world. His hair was shorter, his clothes rumpled. He looked smaller somehow, like time had sanded down his edges. Tyron. Muriel. Hey. Just my name. Soft and certain. Muriel. What are you doing here? He looked at me with the kind of regret that comes too late to matter. Tyron, can we talk just 5 minutes? I should have said no. Every instinct told me to. But something in his voice, it wasn't arrogance anymore. It was emptiness. So I nodded just once. We stood there under the awning, rain falling in sheets around us. Tyron. I know I don't deserve this, but I needed to see you. I keep thinking about what I threw away. I've been trying to get my life together, but everything I touch just falls apart. He laughed bitterly, shoving his hands into his pockets. Tyron. You told me once I treated loyalty like a joke. You were right. Clara cheated, others lied, and now I finally get it. I thought I wanted freedom. Turns out freedom's just loneliness in better lighting. I didn't say anything. The rain filled the silence for me. Tyron. You made things feel calm, you know that. And I mistook calm for boring. I wanted excitement, but excitement doesn't hold you when things fall apart. I'm sorry, Muriel, for everything. For a moment, I just looked at him, the man I once loved enough to break my own heart for, and all I felt was distance. Not anger, not affection, just miles of silence between who we were and who we'd become. Muriel, I appreciate you saying that, but I don't hate you, Tyron. I just stopped needing you to matter. He flinched, not because I said it cruelly, but because I said it gently. Gently is always worse. He nodded, eyes glistening. Tyron. Is there any chance we could try again? Not now, but maybe someday. I shook my head. Muriel, no. You deserve peace, but I can't be part of your healing. That's yours to do. He swallowed hard, looking down. Tyron, you really did love me, didn't you? Muriel, yeah. And that's exactly why I had to let you go. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The rain kept falling like it wanted to erase everything between us. He finally whispered, Tyron, you're different now. Muriel, that's what surviving looks like. He nodded, tears threatening, then stepped back. Tyron, take care of yourself, Muriel. Muriel, I already am. He turned, walked back to his car, and drove off without looking back. When the taillights disappeared into the wet darkness, I felt something unexpected, a wave of gratitude, not for him, but for the closure he didn't realize he'd just given me. That night, I got one last message. Tyron, thank you for not hating me. I hope you're happy. I typed a reply, stared at it, then deleted it before sending. Some stories don't need a response. Some just need to stop. That night, as I fell asleep, I realized forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about locking the door and finally throwing away the key. Time has a strange way of folding itself. Before I knew it, another year had passed since that night under the rain, since Tyron's voice had cracked through my quiet life one last time. But even memories have an expiration date, and his had finally reached it. I'd built something steady again, something that looked suspiciously like happiness. After leaving the logistics firm, I took a leap and started my own small UX design consultancy. It was terrifying at first, like standing on the edge of a cliff and hoping the ground would appear beneath your feet. But it worked. Clients came, word spread, and within months I had a small but reliable team. The kind of team that didn't need to be impressed, just trusted. My days became simple in the best way, early runs along the riverside, work that challenged me, evenings that belonged only to me. I wasn't chasing excitement anymore. I was protecting peace. And for a while that was enough. Then one spring evening, Noah walked into my office with a mischievous grin. Noah, you're coming to the networking gala next week. Muriel. The what, Noah? The citywide one. Our firm, co-sponsors. Everyone's going to be there. It'll be good for visibility. Muriel, Noah, you know I hate those small talk conventions of pretending to be fascinated by someone's elevator pitch. Noah. Exactly why you should go. You'll make them nervous by being honest. I laughed, finally agreeing. Maybe it was time to stop hiding from the noise and simply walk through it unaffected. The night of the gala arrived. Polished marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and people who spoke in rehearsed enthusiasm. I wore a dark green dress, simple, elegant, unbothered. The kind that made confidence look quiet, not loud. Halfway through the evening, I was talking to a designer about a potential collaboration when I heard it. My name. Muriel. I turned and froze. Tyron. He looked older, not by years, but by weight, like life had been sitting heavy on his shoulders. His once sharp confidence had dulled into something uncertain. Muriel Tyron. Tyron, wow. I didn't think I'd see you here. Muriel, same. For a moment, the room blurred around us, the chatter, the music, the clinking glasses. All I could hear was the ghost of a man I used to love standing in front of me, trying to gather words that had lost their power. He smiled weakly. Tyron, you look incredible, successful. Everyone here seems to know you. Muriel, I've been keeping busy. Tyron, yeah, I heard you started your own firm. That's amazing. His voice cracked slightly on the word amazing. Muriel, things are going well. A silence settled between us, not the kind filled with tension, but with finality. He shifted his weight, exhaled. Tyron, I'm doing contract work now. It's been rough. After everything that happened, you probably heard. Muriel, bits and pieces. Tyron Clara cheated again, then took money from me, lied about everything. I got fired after that. It's like karma came for me in installments. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to add. The world had already told our story for us. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes glistening slightly. Tyron, you must think I deserve all of it. I met his gaze, steady, calm, untouchable. Muriel, I don't think about it at all. That line hit him like a quiet slap. He blinked like it hadn't even occurred to him that indifference could cut deeper than anger. Tyron, I've tried to move on, you know, but nothing feels right. Every relationship since you has been chaos. It's like I'm paying for what I did to you. Muriel, that's not my business anymore. You made your choices, Tyron. You're living with them, same as I did. Tyron, you sound so calm, like none of it mattered. Muriel, it mattered once, but pain stops being relevant when you grow past it. He looked down, jaw tight, eyes glimmering with something between guilt and exhaustion. Around us, the world moved on laughter. Handshakes, clinking glasses, but we were standing in the stillness of an ending that no longer hurt. Tyron. Can I just say one thing, Muriel? Go ahead. Tyron. You were the only person who ever wanted something real with me, and I destroyed it because I thought I could do better. I was wrong. For the first time, I smiled. Not bitterly, not triumphantly, just softly. Muriel, you didn't just lose me, Tyron. You lost the version of yourself that someone could have built a life with. He swallowed hard, eyes glassy. Tyron, yeah, I know. I nodded politely, the conversation already over. Muriel, take care of yourself. And I walked away. When I rejoined Noah and my team, I could feel Tyron's gaze on my back, but it didn't follow me home. Later that night, I got a message. Tyron, seeing you tonight reminded me who I could have been if I hadn't ruined everything. I hope you keep being happy, even if I'm not part of it. I didn't reply. I archived the message and turned off my phone. Then I stepped out onto my balcony. The city stretched beneath me, alive, loud, indifferent. I sipped my wine and watched the lights flicker like faraway stars. And for the first time in years, I realized something simple, yet profound. Peace doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't demand applause or validation. It just exists quiet, certain earned. Tyron had been right about one thing once. Peace can feel boring. But if boredom means no betrayal, no manipulation, no begging to be heard, then I'll take it every time. I leaned against the railing, closed my eyes, and smiled. Because the truth is moving on doesn't mean forgetting who hurt you. It means remembering and still choosing yourself anyway. And in that silence, for the first time ever, I didn't feel like I'd lost him. I felt like I'd finally found me. People always talk about chosen family like it's the highest form of friendship. They never tell you that family, even chosen, can still turn into a tribunal, a place where love quietly turns into judgment. My name is Denise Rhines, and I'm 29 years old. For almost a decade, I was the glue in a group of 8 people who once swore we'd never lose touch. We met in college, a loud, chaotic mix of personalities that made sense only when we were together. We called ourselves the Circle, half as a joke, half as a promise. There was Eli, my boyfriend of 3 years. Charismatic, always the center of attention. The kind of man who could make everyone feel special until they realized they were just part of his audience. Then Hannah, my best friend since freshman year, bright, ambitious, the type who made color-coded lists for her life goals and believed everything had spiritual meaning. And the others, Lara, Ben, Maya, Tyler, and June. All of us intertwined by memories, late-night ramen, shared heartbreaks, and the illusion that our friendship was unbreakable. I used to think I was lucky. I was the one people trusted, the listener, the planner, the quiet one who always remembered birthdays and packed extra snacks on road trips. When things went wrong, I smoothed them over. When the group fractured, I stitched it back together. That was my role, the peacekeeper. But the thing about always being the glue, eventually everyone forgets you're part of what's holding them together. It started small, jokes that didn't feel like jokes. Eli once teased, "You're the mom of the group, Denise. Reliable, responsible, a little too predictable." Everyone laughed, and I did too, because that's what you do when you're the joke. But later, the laughter started to sound like agreement. Hannah began talking differently. She'd read those pastel-covered self-help books about vibrations and alignment. She'd tell me, "You're too comfortable, Denise. You're not pushing yourself." I remember asking her once, pushing myself toward what? She smiled, that soft, superior smile. Toward growth. I didn't know content could become another word for boring. But apparently it can if you say it with enough conviction. By the time I noticed Eli and Hannah spending more time together, it didn't feel suspicious. It felt inevitable. They both spoke the same new language about evolution, energy, higher paths. Sometimes Eli would start a sentence with Hannah, and I were just talking about you, and end it with unsolicited advice about how I needed to rebrand my life. Every time a little part of me went quiet. Every time I felt myself shrinking to fit the version of me they approved of. Still, I told myself it was fine. We were friends. We'd been through everything together, graduation breakups, late-night emergencies, even an apartment fire once. Surely that counted for something. It didn't. That Friday night, Eli texted, "Can you come a bit early tonight? Just want to talk before everyone gets here." I didn't think much of it. He did that sometimes to vent about work or ask me to pick up snacks on my way. I stopped by a corner store, grabbed a few drinks, and walked up to his apartment humming along to music. The building smelled like warm dust and burnt coffee, too ordinary to feel like the scene of an execution. When I opened the door, I froze. It wasn't just Eli. Hannah was there. So were Lara, Ben, and Maya, all sitting neatly on the couch, hands folded, faces caught between polite smiles and guilt. Too many shoes by the door, too much silence. "Hey," I said slowly, setting the drinks down. "What's going on?" Eli stood up, his tone rehearsed calm like a manager about to deliver a performance review. "Denise, can you sit down for a sec?" I didn't. I just stared at him. "Is something wrong?" He looked at Hannah, then back at me. "This is going to sound weird," he started, "but the group's been talking about you. About us." "Us," I repeated. "As in, my relationship." He nodded. Hannah's eyes were glossy, but steady. "It's not what you think," she said softly. We've noticed some things, and it's hard to ignore." Eli jumped in. "We care about you, Denise. You've been in the same place for a while now. Same job, same apartment, same everything. You're not really challenging yourself. Hannah's growing, she's evolving, and you're kind of staying the same." That word evolving made my stomach twist. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. "Are you serious?" I asked. Eli held up his hands like he was explaining something logical. "It's not an attack. We just think maybe Hannah deserves someone who's on her wavelength right now." And then Hannah said it. Flat, quiet, final. "The group thinks I can do better." The words didn't make sense. The group thinks I looked around. Ben staring at the floor. Lara's lip trembling. Maya looking like she wanted to disappear. Not one of them spoke up. "You all voted?" I asked. No one answered. Eli's silence was confirmation enough. Hannah's voice broke. "It's not personal, Denise. We just don't feel aligned anymore. We all want more for you." I laughed, but it sounded wrong. "You all want more for me, by deciding I'm not enough." Eli sighed. "Denise, come on. It's just where everyone's at. You're not keeping up with the kind of growth we're all chasing." Growth. Alignment. Evolution. Their words sounded like a sermon. I looked at them. These people I had fed, driven home drunk, comforted through heartbreak, stayed up nights to help study, defended to others, and realized they'd turned into strangers holding a meeting about my worth. My voice shook, but not from tears. "Let me get this straight. You all discussed my relationship, voted, and decided my boyfriend can do better." No one said anything. Finally, I nodded. "Well, I guess the vote's unanimous then." Eli frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm out." I grabbed my jacket, walked to the door, and looked back at them one last time, this self-proclaimed council of growth. "You guys always needed a project," I said quietly. "Congratulations. You just lost the only one who kept it together." And then I left. No screaming, no theatrics. Just the click of the door behind me and the faint murmur of Eli's voice as I walked down the hall. "She'll thank us later." Maybe I will, I thought, but not for the reason they think. Because peace isn't given. It's what's left when everything fake burns away. Silence has a sound. It's not quiet exactly, more like the ringing that follows an explosion. That's what the first few weeks felt like after that night. No texts, no calls. The group chat that once pinged nonstop memes, dinner plans, who's bringing ice went dead. For a few days I kept checking, convinced it was just temporary. Then one morning I opened my phone and saw it. "You've been removed from the circle." Just like that, years of friendship deleted with a tap. I stared at the screen for a long time, my coffee going cold. The name they once joked about, our family name, erased me, like I'd never been there. It shouldn't have hurt that much, but it did. The hardest part wasn't losing Eli. It was losing the noise. The constant messages, the half-arguments, the late-night group calls, they'd been the heartbeat of my life. And when it stopped, I didn't realize how addicted I'd been to the static. For days, I wandered around my apartment like a ghost. The same apartment they used to fill with laughter and chaos. Eli's mug still sat in my kitchen sink. Hannah's sweater was draped over the couch from the last time she'd cried there over something small, something I'd stayed up comforting her for. Now the silence wrapped around me like fog. I tried to convince myself I was fine. I went to work. I smiled at colleagues. I said I'm just tired when people asked if I was okay. But when I came home, the walls felt like they were breathing, waiting for a voice that wasn't coming back. After a week, I deleted all our old photos. Then I emptied the fridge, rearranged the furniture, threw away Eli's forgotten things. But there are ghosts that live in gestures, not objects. The way my hand reached for my phone to text we're out of milk. The way I set 2 plates instead of 1 when I cooked. The way my playlists sounded wrong without the people they once scored. That's the thing about being the steady one. When you break, it's quiet. No one hears the sound. Then one night, about a month later, I went for a drive. No destination, just the need to move. The city lights blurred in the windshield rain, streaking down like tear tracks. Without meaning to, I ended up near the old marina. It was empty, the smell of salt and rust thick in the air. I parked and sat there for a while, watching the water slap against the docks. My dad used to bring me here when I was a kid. We didn't have much, but sometimes we'd sit by the edge with sandwiches watching the boats sway in rhythm. He'd say, "See how they rock, but never fall." That's what peace looks like, Denise, not stillness, balance. I hadn't thought about that in years, but sitting there that night soaked in rain and headlights, I understood him. Peace wasn't the absence of storms. It was surviving them without capsizing. The next morning, I stopped checking my phone entirely. The group's absence stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like space, wide, unfamiliar, but mine. I began small, waking up early, opening the windows, making breakfast for one without feeling sad about it. I deleted social media apps. I took long walks by the waterfront, sometimes barefoot, just to remember what the world felt like when it wasn't filtered through someone else's expectations. And slowly the ringing quiet began to turn into real quiet, not loneliness freedom. It hit me one night, sitting cross-legged on my living room floor, surrounded by moving boxes I hadn't touched in years. All that time I'd built my life like a group project. Every decision ran through a silent committee. Will they like this? Will this fit the group dynamic? Will I still belong if I change? Now, for the first time, there was no committee, no vote, just me. It was terrifying and exhilarating. Still, some nights memories crept back. The laughter, the warmth, the false sense of safety. And sometimes I'd whisper to the dark, "Did I really mean that little to them?" The silence never answered, but somehow that was enough. A few weeks later, I drove to the marina again, this time with purpose. The same boats were there, bobbing softly in the tide, patient and unbothered. And that's when the idea came, gentle but firm. What if I stopped trying to rebuild the old life entirely? What if I just left, not out of revenge, not to prove anything, just to start again alone on purpose? That night, I couldn't sleep. The thought kept looping through my head like a tide coming in. Every room I looked at, every object I'd bought, every photo frame on the shelf, all of it belonged to a version of me who lived for others, who waited for permission to change. Maybe it was time to find out who I could be without the vote, without the group, without the noise. That thought didn't feel sad. It felt like oxygen. I didn't know it yet, but I was already halfway gone. Halfway to the woman, I would become the one who would sail out on a small boat named Driftwood, leaving behind everything that once defined her. And as I stared at the moonlit water, I said quietly to myself, "Let them evolve. I'll move." You don't realize how heavy a life is until you start packing it into boxes. Every drawer I opened felt like peeling back a layer of who I used to be. Receipts from old trips, birthday cards, signed by people who no longer spoke to me. Photos of smiling faces frozen in lies they hadn't told yet. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was tired. Tired of being the background character in my own story. So one morning, I did something simple, radical, only in its finality. I opened my laptop and typed "used sailboat for sale." The idea had started as a whisper at the marina, but the whisper had grown teeth. It wasn't escapism, it was reclamation. When you spend your life orbiting others, stillness can feel like rebellion. But movement, even aimless movement, feels like truth. A week later, I stood on the dock again, wind tangling my hair, the smell of salt and engine oil wrapping around me. The broker's voice was distant as he gestured toward her. "She's small but sturdy. Been through a few storms." He was talking about the boat, but it felt like he was describing me. The hull was white with a strip of faded blue paint. Teak trim along the sides, weathered but beautiful. Inside, a cramped little cabin with just enough space for a bed, a tiny stove, and a coffee pot. When I ran my hand along the railing, splinters pricked my skin proof. She wasn't perfect, just real. I bought her that same day. No hesitation. No approval needed. Just a signed check and a deep trembling breath. I named her Driftwood, because driftwood used to be part of something whole until the sea reshaped it, discarded, softened, free. It felt like a name I could grow into. The first night on Driftwood, the marina lights shimmered across the water like broken glass. The air smelled of salt and rain. I sat on deck wrapped in an old blanket, drinking cheap wine from a chipped mug, listening to the creak of the ropes as the boat rocked gently. And somewhere between the hum of the water and the whisper of the wind, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, quiet. Not the kind of quiet that follows rejection, the kind that feels earned. I didn't think about Eli, or Hannah, or the group chat that used to dictate my weeks. For the first time in forever, I didn't need to be anyone's piece. I was my own. Days became weeks. I learned how to live small, how to measure time by tides instead of notifications. Mornings started with instant coffee on deck, watching sunlight drip across the water. Afternoons were for fixing things I'd never touched before, patching leaks, cleaning filters, oiling wood. Every screw I tightened, every rope I learned to tie was a quiet middle finger to the people who'd once called me stagnant. At night, I'd read by lantern light my dad's old sailing manual open on my knees. His handwriting still filled the margins. Always respect the wind. Never fight the current, use it. He'd never imagined I'd take those notes this literally, but maybe he would have been proud. The funny thing about peace is that it's both beautiful and dangerous. It strips away noise, but also excuses. There's no one left to blame for your unhappiness, no one to fix it for you. You either drown in the silence or you learn to float. For me, floating became survival. Each morning I woke up to the smell of diesel and sea salt, the deck shimmering with dew. The first few times I sailed beyond the marina, I was terrified. The wind was strong, the horizon endless. But fear is different when you have no audience. It stops being humiliation and starts being proof you're alive. One evening, I anchored near a small inlet where the water turned gold under the setting sun. Seagulls wheeled overhead. My hair was tangled, my hands blistered. My skin sunburned, but my heart was steady. I hadn't checked my phone in days, maybe weeks. And for once, I didn't care what anyone thought of me. No metrics, no votes, just rhythm and breath and sea. I thought about them sometimes. About Hannah with her endless affirmations and moral superiority. About Eli with his charm and hollow empathy. About how the group used to look at me like a safe harbor and how they abandoned me when they wanted to chase storms. It used to hurt. Now it just didn't. You can't mourn people who were never really with you, only beside you. As driftwood rocked gently under the moonlight, I whispered to the waves, "You all wanted growth. Well, this is mine." For the first time, I meant it. That night, I slept without dreams. When I woke up, I made coffee, climbed onto the deck, and watched the morning mist peel away from the sea. Somewhere behind me, my old life continued. Group dinners, filtered smiles, captions about energy. But I wasn't in that world anymore. And for the first time, that felt like freedom, not loss. Still, as the horizon glowed pink and gold, I felt something shift, a strange, subtle instinct. That kind of peace doesn't last forever. It's too pure, too quiet. And peace, I would soon learn, has a way of calling the past back to test whether you've really earned it. It was almost 3 months before my old life tried to find me again. By then, Driftwood had become more than a boat. She was a companion, a confession, a moving home that asked for nothing but care. Every surface bore traces of me, now scratches from tools, pages of notes taped near the wheel, salt rings from tea mugs I forgot to wash. My hands were rougher, my hair tangled by wind and sun. But when I looked in the mirror, nailed beside the cabin door, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, stillness that wasn't forced. Then one night, while I was cooking instant noodles over a small camping stove, my phone buzzed an unfamiliar sound in a life that no longer depended on it. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten. Ben, quiet Ben. The one who never picked sides. The one who always deflected with a joke. His message was short, 5 words that landed like a stone in calm water. "You were right to leave." I stared at it for a long time, steam rising from my half-cooked noodles. No context, no greeting. Just that. I typed back before I could stop myself. "What happened?" He didn't reply right away. The minutes stretched into an hour. The tide shifted. Then finally, the group's falling apart. Eli's different now. Hannah's not doing great. Guess the universe didn't align like they thought. A hollow laugh slipped out before I could help it. I could almost hear the irony echoing across the water. They wanted evolution. They got entropy instead. I hadn't looked at social media in months, but curiosity is a stubborn parasite. Later that night, I turned on my old phone and scrolled through their pages, the glow of the screen reflecting off the waves. The soul family aesthetic was gone. No dinner photos, no group selfies, no captions about vibrational alignment. The last post from their circle was over a month old, a picture of Hannah at some retreat. Eyes closed, hands in prayer pose. Caption: learning to trust the universe again. The comments were sparse. Ben's usual jokes, gone. Maya's supportive emojis, missing. Even Eli hadn't liked it. Then I checked his profile. Eli had new friends now, work acquaintances mostly. His captions sounded eerily familiar, recycled from Hannah's old mantras. Not everyone deserves your energy. Sometimes growth means leaving others behind. He was using her words, her tone, even her hashtags. And for the first time, I realized they hadn't been growing. They'd just been imitating each other, the internet, whatever version of self-help fit their latest identity crisis. Without me, the group had no center, no planner, no peacekeeper, no one to balance the chaos. They'd mistaken my stability for weakness, but it had been the glue all along. I closed the app, tossed the phone aside, and leaned back against the wooden mast. The waves lapped softly against Driftwood's hull, steady and unbothered. It didn't feel like vindication, it felt like closure. But peace, even quiet peace, is never absolute. About a week later, my phone buzzed again, this time with a number I knew by heart. Hannah. I didn't answer. It stopped ringing after a few seconds, then rang again, and finally a message. Denise, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that night. I let people get in my head. My hand hovered over the screen. Her words looked sincere. But sincerity means nothing when it comes too late. I didn't reply. She messaged again 2 days later. Everything fell apart. The group's gone. Eli turned out to be a hypocrite. I can't believe how fake everyone was. Can we talk, please? I set the phone down and stared at the horizon. The sea was silver blue, the kind of color that makes you forget the world existed before it. Her desperation felt like static trying to interrupt a song I'd finally learned to hear. Then came another message. He's dating Laura now. That one made me laugh, not cruelly, but quietly, like someone who's seen the ending of a movie everyone else still thinks is suspenseful. 2 weeks. That's all it took for Eli to move on to the next person in his aligned orbit. It's not funny, she texted. You're right, I typed back. It's poetic. She didn't reply for a while. When she did, it was just 3 words. I miss you. I read them twice. Then a third time. Not out of longing, but curiosity. Did she miss me, or did she miss the way I steadied her world? I typed one sentence. Peaceful's expensive. Then I turned off the phone, let it sink into the drawer beside my bed where old pain belonged. For the next few weeks, I didn't hear from anyone again. The marina became my rhythm. Morning coffee sunlight, bleeding through mist gulls circling above like slow-moving thoughts. Ben sent one last message, a single line. Guess they voted themselves out this time. And maybe that was the truest thing anyone had said in months. Because that's the thing about people who claim to outgrow others. They rarely realize they're pruning their own roots. The circle had withered without me, not because I was special, but because I was the only one who cared to hold them together. Now, as driftwood swayed gently beneath a rising moon, I whispered to the sea. They said I wasn't evolving. Turns out I just evolved where they couldn't follow. I thought that was the end. But stories, real stories, never end where you think they do. Because peace, once tested, demands proof. And the proof was about to arrive, standing on the dock months later, under the same sky that had once seen me leave. It was late autumn when the past finally found the courage to face me. The sea had turned steel gray, and the air was heavy with the scent of rain. I was docked near a quiet coastal town, a place so small it didn't even have streetlights by the marina. The kind of place where no one asked questions, just nodded when you passed. That evening, I was mending a torn sail, humming softly to myself, when I heard a voice calling my name. Familiar, hesitant, breaking on the second syllable. Denise. For a moment, I thought I imagined it. Then I turned, and there she was, Hannah. She looked like a ghost of her old self. Hair shorter, unevenly cut, skin pale. The radiant confidence she once wore like armor had drained away, leaving a kind of fragile stillness in its place. Her eyes darted around as if expecting me to disappear. "Hey," she said softly, hands stuffed into her jacket pockets. "You look different." "So do you," I answered. We stood there, the sound of the tide filling the space between us. She shifted from foot to foot like a child rehearsing an apology she didn't know how to give. "I know you probably don't want to see me," she started. I didn't respond, so she kept going. "But I had to. I've been replaying that night over and over, and You voted," I said quietly. Her breath caught. "Denise, I didn't mean for it to go like that. You said I wasn't aligned with your energy." I said, my voice calm, almost gentle. "You said you could do better." She winced. "I know." God, I know how awful that sounds now. Eli twisted everything. He made it sound like you were holding me back. I believed him. "Because it was easier than admitting you were unhappy," I replied. She looked down, tears threatening to spill. "He made me feel like I had to outgrow you to matter. And then he moved on to Lara." 2 weeks later, I nodded. "Poetic, isn't it?" She let out a bitter laugh, the sound of someone choking on their own lesson. "I thought I was so enlightened," she said. "But I was just selfish and scared." Her voice cracked. "I lost everything, Denise. The group's gone. Eli ruined what was left. And I don't even recognize myself anymore." "You wanted evolution," I said softly. "You got it, just not the kind you imagined." We fell silent again. Rain began to fall in light, deliberate drops, blurring the world into gray and silver. She stepped closer, her shoes squeaking on the dock. "I miss you," she whispered. "You were the only one who made things feel safe." I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw her not as the girl who betrayed me, but as a mirror I'd already stepped past. Everything she was, I used to be constantly adjusting to make others comfortable, confusing control for care calling, fear growth. "You don't miss me," I said finally. "You miss the version of yourself that existed when I was around." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "You liked having me as your calm," I said, "because it made your chaos feel meaningful. Without me, you had to face what you really are when no one's holding you steady." She stared at me, trembling. "That's not fair." "Neither was the vote," I said gently. "But maybe this is balance." Hannah's shoulders sagged. The rain picked up, tapping the dock like impatient fingers. She wiped her face and tried to smile. "Do you hate me?" I thought about that for a long moment. About all the sleepless nights, the silent phone, the ache of being erased. Then I shook my head. "No, I don't hate you. I just don't need you anymore." Something in her broke at that. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but no words came. "I just wanted to say sorry," she whispered finally, "for all of it." "I know," I said, "and for what it's worth, I forgive you." Her eyes widened. "You do?" I smiled faintly. "Forgiving isn't the same as returning." She looked like she wanted to say more, but I stepped back toward the boat. The rain had soaked through my jacket. My hair clung to my face. Behind me, the waves slapped softly against the dock, as if punctuating every truth we'd left unsaid. I climbed onto driftwood, turned toward her one last time, and said quietly, "You all voted. I just followed your decision and went somewhere better." She stood there, crying silently, her silhouette blurred by rain and distance. For a moment, I almost reached out. Then I remembered that peace, real peace, doesn't come with rescue missions. I started the engine. The low hum filled the air, grounding me. As the boat drifted away from the dock, I looked back once, just long enough to see her shrinking in the mist. Not as an enemy, not even as a friend, just as someone who once taught me what I would never be again. That night I made tea on the deck. The sea was calm, the air sharp with salt. I raised the mug toward the horizon and whispered not out of anger, but clarity. "Peaceful's expensive, but I've finally paid in full." The wind carried the words away, scattering them across the water like ashes of an old life finally burned clean. I didn't see Hannah again after that night on the dock. She left without another word, a soaked, trembling shadow swallowed by the fog. And when her footsteps faded, it was as if the world exhaled. I went back to my cabin, wrapped myself in a blanket that smelled of salt and old wood, and felt a quiet finality settle in my chest. For the first time, her absence didn't ache. It simply was. Weeks passed. The season shifted, the water darkened, and the mornings came with that faint bite of winter. Driftwood creaked and hummed beneath me, like a living thing, and I started to think of her less as a boat and more as a witness. She'd seen me unravel and rebuild. She knew the weight of every silence, the texture of every wound that had turned into wisdom. Most evenings I anchored near the edge of the bay, watching the sun melt into the horizon, colors bleeding into each other like forgiveness and grief sharing the same sky. I'd light a lantern, make tea, and write. Not letters, not diaries, just sentences that began as memories and ended as truths. They called me stagnant, but maybe stillness was just my way of listening. They voted to grow apart. I learned to grow within. I didn't plan to publish them or even keep them. But the act of writing felt like reclaiming the language they'd stolen. Words like peace, alignment, growth. Words they'd used to hurt me now belonged to me again. One night I received a message from Ben, a photo this time, a small cafe table, 2 cups of coffee, and a caption. Ran into Hannah. She's moving out of town. Said you were the only real one. I stared at the photo until my eyes blurred. Then I turned off my phone and put it face down on the counter. I didn't feel sadness, just the strange serenity of knowing that closure had already happened, even if she was still chasing it. Because sometimes the most merciful thing you can give someone is distance. Let them wrestle with their own echoes until they understand the silence you left behind. As winter deepened, I decided to take driftwood farther south. There was a small island port I'd always wanted to see, a place my father once mentioned when I was little, back when life still felt big and forgiving. He used to say, that's where the water stops feeling like a barrier and starts feeling like home. So I set sail before dawn one morning, mist curling around me like breath. The engine rumbled softly, the ropes groaned, and the sea stretched ahead, open, endless, forgiving. Halfway through the journey, the wind shifted. Not violently, just enough to test my balance. And for a brief, trembling second, I thought, this is what peace feels like when it's tested. Not calm, not chaos, just control without fear. I adjusted the sails and smiled. I wasn't running from ghosts anymore. I was sailing toward the person I had become because of them. That night, anchored near the island, I sat on deck beneath a sky so clear it almost looked new. The stars reflected on the water, 1,000 tiny mirrors, reminding me of everything I'd survived. The pain, the humiliation, the loneliness. All of it had distilled into something quiet and strong. I thought of Hannah then, of Eli, of every person who had spoken my worth like it was theirs to decide. And instead of anger, I felt gratitude, because their rejection had been the fire that forged my stillness. They burned the bridge I'd been too kind to cross, and on the other side of that fire I found myself. I poured another cup of tea and whispered into the wind. You all wanted to evolve, I just learned to breathe. Driftwood rocked gently beneath me, and I closed my eyes, letting the rhythm carry me. Maybe one day I'd dock somewhere for good. Maybe I wouldn't. But I knew this much, I'd never again shrink to fit someone else's version of growth. Because peace isn't a destination. It's the moment you stop asking for permission to exist. And as the sea breathed around me, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. I was whole. Dawn came soft and slow, like the world had decided to start over. The horizon stretched open in shades of gold and rose, and driftwood rocked gently, patient as always. I stood barefoot on deck, a mug of coffee warming my hands, breathing in the scent of salt metal and new beginnings. The sea was glass that morning. No wind, no rush, just reflection. And for a long time I stared at it, realizing that it wasn't just showing me the sky. It was showing me myself. Not the woman they once judged, not the version I twisted myself into to be loved, but the person who survived all of it, quiet, steady, unshaken. I used to think revenge was about making them see what they'd lost. Now I know the real revenge is peace they can't disturb anymore. Because silence is deafening when you've spent your life screaming for attention. And freedom tastes sharpest to the ones who once lived on approval. I heard through Ben one last message before he deleted social media entirely that Eli had broken up with Laura. Apparently he'd found someone more aligned. Of course he had. People like him always move the goalpost so they never have to admit they're the problem. As for Hannah, she left the city. No grand post, no apology tour, just gone. Ben said she was taking a job somewhere up north near the woods, trying to start over, he wrote, like you did. But that wasn't true. She was trying to forget. There's a difference. Starting over means facing yourself. Forgetting just means delaying the reckoning. Later that afternoon, as I sat writing in my journal, I found myself sketching the 8 of us, as we used to be, messy, bright, naive. All smiles, hands, tangled faces tilted toward laughter that now felt fictional. And I realized something I hadn't before. We were never really family. We were therapy for each other's loneliness, borrowed comfort that only worked as long as no one healed too fast. When I stopped being broken in the way they needed me to be, they didn't know what to do with me anymore, so they voted me out. And that's okay, because I learned to stop asking people who benefit from your silence to teach you peace. That night I sailed again, not far, just enough to watch the coastline fade. The stars shimmered across the water like scattered glass. The sound of the engine hummed like a heartbeat beneath my feet. I thought about my father, his voice from years ago. You can't stop waves, Denise. You just learn which ones are worth riding. Maybe that was all this ever was, not a tragedy, not even a betrayal, just the wave that taught me how to sail alone. As the moon rose higher, I set my journal down and whispered the words that had once belonged to Eli, to Hannah, to all of them, but now finally belonged only to me. Not everyone deserves your energy. Sometimes growth means leaving others behind. They had used those lines to justify cruelty, but on my lips they felt different. Not excuses, boundaries, not superiority, peace. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of pine from the distant shore. I took one last look at the horizon and smiled. They said I wasn't evolving, I murmured. Turns out I just evolved where they couldn't follow. Driftwood swayed, as if she understood. The sea, vast and endless, opened before me, not as an escape, but as proof. Because I wasn't running anymore, I was arriving. The lantern flickered, the tide sighed, and for the first time in a long, long while, I whispered, not to anyone, but to the quiet itself, "Thank you."